Welcome to Voices of the Case. In this episode, we want to tell you the story of Natalee Holloway, the disappearance that haunts Aruba.
If you enjoy true crime, subscribe to Voices of the Case so you never miss an episode.
It's just such a stark image, isn't it? A young American woman, just graduated high school, ready for that next chapter.
And then gone. Vanish during a graduation trip. It's deeply unsettling.
Absolutely. We're talking about Natalee Ann Holloway. She was born October 21st, 1986. And she disappeared on May 30th, 2005 in Aruba.
Right, just days after graduating from Mountain Brook High School in Alabama. She was only 18. She was eventually declared legally dead years later, January 12, 2012.
But back in 2005, this case just exploded in the U.S. media almost overnight.
Oh, completely. It had all the elements, didn't it? Young woman, exotic location, sudden disappearance. It really captured and maybe terrified the public imagination, tapped into some deep fears.
So let's set the scene a bit. It's late May 2005. Natalee's in Aruba for a 5-day graduation trip.
And it wasn't just a few friends. It was a big group, 124 classmates, I think, and 7 chaperones, meant to be this, final big celebration before college.
You can just feel the excitement they must have had. Freedom, sunshine.
Exactly. But then comes the last night, Sunday, May 29th, going into Monday the 30th. Things take a dark turn.
Natalee's last seen by her friends outside Carlos and Charlie's. It's a club in Oranjestad, about 1:30 a.m. Monday morning.
And she's getting into a car, a silver Honda, I believe, with 3 local young men.
That's Joran van der Sloot, who was a Dutch student living there, and 2 brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpo.
And that single moment, getting into that car, that's the last confirmed sighting.
And here's the detail that just punches you in the gut.
Yeah.
Later that same day, Monday, May 30th, Natalee misses her flight home.
Yeah. And when they check her hotel room, her luggage is packed. Her passport is there.
Right. So she wasn't planning on staying. She didn't just, oversleep or change her mind.
No, this immediately signals something is very, very wrong. The puzzle pieces just weren't fitting right from the beginning.
So the 3 men in the car, van der Sloot and the Kelpie brothers, what was their initial story?
Well, initially, they claimed they just dropped her off at her hotel, the Holiday Inn, said they didn't know anything else. Seemed simple enough on the surface.
But that story didn't hold up for long, did it?
Not at all. As soon as investigators started digging, inconsistencies started popping up, big questions about their involvement.
And Natalee's parents, Beth and Jug Twitty, they flew down almost immediately, right?
Within hours of hearing, she'd missed the flight. Understandably frantic. And Beth, based on what she heard from the hotel manager, focused on Joran van der Sloot pretty quickly. He was the last one seen with her.
So how did van der Sloot's story start to change?
It started shifting almost right away. First, he apparently denied even knowing Natalee.
Really? After being seen leaving with her?
Exactly. Then, the story changed. They went for a drive to the California lighthouse, Arashi Beach. Apparently, Natalee wanted to see sharks in the dark, which sounds odd.
Yeah. Bit strange.
Then he claimed they dropped her back at the hotel around 2:00 a.m. But then he adds this really weird detail.
What was that?
He said she fell down, she refused their help getting up, and then some dark-skinned man wearing something like a security guard shirt approached her.
That's incredibly specific and also kind of vague. Just seems like a way to deflect, maybe.
It felt very strange, like trying to introduce another unknown person into the narrative. It just deepened the mystery and, frankly, the suspicion around him.
Meanwhile, the search effort on Aruba must have been massive.
Oh, it was huge. Hundreds of volunteers came out, locals, people flying in from the U.S. The Aruban government apparently mobilized a lot of its own people.
And military involvement, too.
Yes, about 50 Dutch Marines searching the coastline. And the Dutch Royal Air Force sent F-16s.
F-16s. With infrared.
Yeah, scanning the island from the air, looking for any heat signature, any sign. Divers were searching underwater, too. Just this enormous effort.
And despite all that,
nothing. Not a single trace of Natalee.
So the investigation starts making arrests, right? Who do they bring in first?
Well, initially, 2 former hotel security guards, Nick Jarion and Abraham Jones. But they were released pretty quickly, no charges.
And then the focus shifts back to the guys in the car.
Exactly. Van der Sloot and the Kalpo brothers were arrested. But this became a pattern. They were arrested and released multiple times, always citing a lack of, concrete evidence.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for everyone involved, especially the family.
Absolutely. And it fueled a lot of public anger and confusion. Plus, you had these weird conflicting reports coming from officials.
Like what?
At one point, a spokesman for the justice minister actually announced that Natalee was dead and they knew where her body was.
What?
Yeah, huge news. But then, almost immediately, they retracted it, claimed the spokesman was fed disinformation.
That's chaotic. How does that even happen in a major investigation?
It created so much uncertainty, really damaged trust in what information was coming out.
Were there other arrests around this time?
Yeah, they briefly brought in a DJ, Steve Gregory Crows, and even Joran van der Sloot's father, Paulus, for questioning.
His father.
Yes, but both were released without charges. It felt like investigators were casting a wide net, maybe under pressure, to find something.
And were van der Sloot and the Kalpos sticking to their dropped her at the hotel story?
Well, that changed too. Eventually, their stories sort of aligned on a different location. They started saying they left her at the Marriott Hotel Beach near some of the fishermen huts.
So not her hotel.
No, a different hotel's beach. Van der Sloot still insisted he hadn't harmed her, just left her there, alone, on the beach, in the middle of the night.
That sounds incredibly irresponsible at best.
To say the least.
Yeah.
And then there was a tip about that area. A gardener said he saw the three men near the Marriott's Racquet Club pond early on May 30th.
So they searched the pond.
They partially drained it. Took several days. Nancy Grace called that gardener's testimony something that opens cracks in the case. But, like everything else, nothing conclusive was found.
And there was another tip about a landfill.
Yeah, this was chilling. A runner claimed they saw men burying a blonde woman there on the afternoon of May 30th.
Hadn't they already searched the landfill?
They had right after she disappeared. But this new tip led to 3 more searches. The FBI even brought in cadaver dogs for one of them.
Dogs trained to find human remains.
Exactly. But again, nothing. Another dead end.
The reward money must have been getting pretty high by this point.
Yeah. It started at $50,000 for her safe return, then jumped to $1 million. Plus a separate reward for information leading to her remains, which eventually went up to $250,000.
Huge amounts. Shows the desperation.
Absolutely. And the FBI got more involved analyzing potential evidence. Remember that piece of duct tape with blonde hair found on the beach?
Vaguely, yeah. Was that hers?
They sent it for testing in the Netherlands and at Quantico, but nope. The FBI concluded it wasn't Natalee's hair. Another hopeful lead just fizzled out.
So the Kalpos get arrested again.
Right. August 26, 2005. Along with a new guy, Freddie Arambatsis. The suspicion around Arambatsis seemed to involve some unrelated incident with inappropriate photos, possibly involving the other 3.
What was the thinking there? Trying to pressure the Kalpos.
That's what many thought. Van der Sloot's mother called it a desperate attempt to get the boys to talk, but officially, no clear reason given for rearresting the Kalpos specifically.
Did it work? Did they talk?
Apparently not. A judge ordered all 4 released on September 3rd, and then just a couple of weeks later, the Court of Appeals removed all restrictions. They were free to travel.
Wow. So back to square one, essentially.
Pretty much. And then Joran van der Sloot starts doing media interviews.
Oh, yeah. What was he saying now?
He did a big multi-night interview on the record in March 2006. Claimed Natalee wanted to have sex, but they didn't because he didn't have a condom.
Seriously?
Yeah. And he repeated the story about leaving her alone on the beach, but now around 3:00 a.m., it just kept changing, you know? None of it helped clear the suspicion around him.
Did authorities try talking to the classmates again?
They did. The FBI and Aruban police re-interviewed some of them back in the U.S. in January 2006, hoping maybe someone remembered something new.
Any luck?
Doesn't seem like it. They followed up with more searches, sand dunes, areas near the Marriott Beach again in early 2006. Still nothing. Just endless, frustrating searching.
And the lead investigator at the time, Police Commissioner Dompig, he had a theory.
Right before he left the case, yeah. Gerald Dompig suggested Natalee likely died from alcohol or maybe drug intoxication, and that someone else panicked and hit her body.
An accidental death, essentially.
That was his theory. He even mentioned some evidence suggesting she might have possessed drugs, not necessarily used them, but possessed them.
How did the family react to that?
They strongly denied it. You can imagine it adds another layer of awfulness to the whole thing.
Were there other leads being pursued? You mentioned drug trafficking earlier.
Yeah, there were more arrests in April 2006, Jeffrey von Kromwort, and someone just called PR. Supposedly linked to possible drug trafficking connections that might somehow tie into the disappearance, but again, released.
And another arrest in the Netherlands.
Guido Weaver, son of an Aruban politician, arrested in May 2006, suspected of helping with kidnapping, abuse, maybe murder, but same story eventually released. no charges.
It's just arrest after arrest, release after release.
Exactly. And then, in September 2006, the Netherlands formally takes over the lead in the investigation at Aruba's request, bringing in a fresh Dutch team.
Did that change things?
Well, they did resume active investigation in Aruba in April 2007, and around that same time, Joran van der Sloot publishes a book.
He wrote a book about the case.
Co-wrote it, yeah. De zaak Natalee Holloway, the Natalee Holloway case. Gave his side of the story, admitted lying to police initially, but still maintained his innocence regarding her disappearance.
Unbelievable. And then his family home gets searched again.
Right. April 27th, 2007. About 20 investigators searched the yard, probed the ground. Authorities said it was based on new indications.
Any idea what those were?
The local newspaper editor suggested they were looking into calls and emails between the suspects, maybe focusing on a laptop. But Joran's father said they found nothing suspicious except maybe his diary and computer, which were returned. Still unclear what triggered that search.
Okay, so the Dutch are investigating, the book is out, the house is searched. Then what?
Then, November 21st, 2007, another bombshell. Van der Sloot and both Calpo brothers are arrested again.
For the third time. On what grounds?
Newly discovered evidence, they said. Suspicion of involuntary manslaughter and serious physical injury resulting in death. Van der Sloot was arrested in the Netherlands and flown back to Aruba.
This must have felt like maybe this is finally it.
You'd think so. But while this is happening, Dave Holloway, Natalee's dad, is funding his own deep-sea search.
Going deeper than the official searches.
Yeah, with a special ship, the Persistence, looking beyond the 330-foot depth limit of previous searches. But sadly, he ran out of funds, didn't find anything, just heartbreaking.
And what happened with that third arrest of the suspects?
Same pattern. Late November 2007, a judge orders the Calpos released. The prosecution appeals, but the appeal fails in early December. The court basically says, look, after all this time, there's still no direct evidence she died from a violent crime.
And van der Sloot.
Release 2, December 7th, 2007. Same reason, lack of conclusive evidence of a violent crime or his direct role.
So the case is officially closed again.
Prosecutor Hans Moss declared the active phase closed on December 18th. Not enough evidence for charges, though they did say they were still interested in the three, mentioning some disputed chat messages.
And what about the teacher who drowned?
Exactly. The defense lawyer said it was a mistranslation. Another prosecutor basically said, unless we find a body in one of their bathrooms, we can't arrest them again. Grim.
But just when you think it's over, Peter R. de Vries enters the picture.
Right. The Dutch investigative reporter. January 2008, he claims he's solved the case. Says he'll reveal everything on TV.
The anticipation must have been intense, though Beth Twitty's lawyer sounded skeptical.
He was, but then Dutch media reports Van der Sloot confessed, which, of course,
He immediately retracted.
he did. Claimed he was just telling the person what they wanted to hear. But the Aruban prosecutor reopened the investigation anyway, based on de Vries's claims.
So what was actually in the broadcast?
It was huge. Hidden camera footage. A businessman named Patrick van der Eem had befriended Van der Sloot and secretly recorded him in his car.
And what did van der Sloot say on tape?
Well, seemingly high on marijuana, he's heard saying he was with Natalee when she started having stouters, became unresponsive. He tried to revive her, failed, called a friend, who told him to just go home and get rid of the body.
Oh my God, that sounds like a confession.
It absolutely sounded like one. Shocking stuff.
Did they try to arrest him based on that?
They did. The prosecutor sought a warrant, but the judge denied it. They appealed, but the appeals court agreed. The statements on tape were inconsistent with other evidence and not enough for detention.
Inconsistent how?
The court didn't specify exactly, but likely pointed to discrepancies with forensic findings or other witness statements gathered over the years. It highlights how hard it is to use recordings like that as the sole basis for arrest.
And van der Sloot's reaction?
He met with investigators, denied everything on the tape was true, said he was high, just talking nonsense, stuck to his original story, left her on the beach. That pattern again. Confess, retract.
And the guy who recorded him, Van der Eem. Turns out there was more to that story too.
Oh yeah, it came out he'd been recording Van der Sloot for longer than admitted, even after supposedly turning cameras off. He revealed he'd known Van der Sloot for years, not just since 2007 like de Vries claimed.
And he hoped to make money off this.
Admitted, hoping to become a millionaire from it. Even claimed he knew the guy who supposedly disposed of the body and that Van der Sloot asked him for money to buy that guy's silence. He later wrote a book about it all.
So his motives seem questionable, to say the least.
Definitely adds another layer of murkiness. And DeVries's methods got criticized, too, by legal psychologists.
How so?
They argued it wasn't a legally valid confession, given the circumstances being recorded secretly, possibly under the influence, and that broadcasting it could actually hurt any future prosecution. Better to just give it to the police. One professor even questioned if it was certain a crime even occurred.
Just when you think it can't get any weirder, Vandersloot gives another interview.
November 2008. On the record again. This time, he claims he sold Natalee into sexual slavery.
Wow.
Horrific allegation. And he implicated the Calpos and his own father in it.
Let me guess.
He retracted it later, of course.
And there was that audio recording, supposedly of him and his father.
Yeah, Vandersloot provided it, claimed it showed his dad knew about human trafficking. But forensic analysis suggested the voice wasn't his father's, though some reports disagreed. Just more confusion.
And then his father passed away.
Paulus Vandersloot died of a heart attack in February 2010, another tragic element in this whole saga.
But Natalee's family, especially her dad, kept searching, didn't they?
Dave Holloway never gave up. March 2009, he's back in Aruba with a search dog, checking out a reservoir based on a witness tip. Aruban authorities let him search, but found nothing.
And the underwater photos in 2010.
An American couple thought they photographed human remains while diving. Authorities sent divers back to that spot, but again, nothing. Just hope, then disappointment. Over and over.
Okay, so now we get to the extortion plot in 2010. This is where things shift towards U.S. legal action.
Right. Around late March 2010, Vandersloot contacts Beth Twitty's lawyer, John Q. Kelly.
With an offer.
A chilling one.
Yeah.
Says he knows where Natalee's body is, how she died, and he'll tell them for $250,000. $25,000 up front, the rest when the info checks out.
Just brazen. What did Kelly do?
Immediately contacted the FBI. They set up a sting operation.
How did that work?
They recorded him receiving $10,000 cash in Aruba and wired $15,000 to his bank account in the Netherlands. All caught on tape by undercover agents.
And the information he gave them for the money?
Totally false. He pointed them to a house, claimed her body was there. Problem was, the house hadn't even been built when Natalee disappeared 5 years earlier.
So he just lied to get the money.
Looks that way. And that led directly to U.S. charges.
Extortion and wire fraud.
Exactly. Indicted in Alabama in June 2010. An arrest warrant went out via Interpol. Dutch authorities raided properties linked to him, including a reporter's house who'd interviewed him. Aruban police searched a beach based on info from the sting, but again, nothing found related to Natalee. Dave Holloway even went back again to follow up.
But just as these U.S. charges are filed, Vandersloot is involved in something else horrific, isn't he?
No.
In Peru.
Yes. Unbelievably, on May 30th, 2010, the 5th anniversary of Natalee's disappearance.
That date can't be a coincidence.
It seems chillingly significant. On that day, a 21-year-old student in Lima, Peru, Stephanie Flores Ramirez, goes missing. 3 days later, her body is found, brutally murdered, in a hotel room registered to Jaron Vandersloot.
Oh my God.
He fled to Chile but was caught, deported back to Peru. And on June 7th, 2010, Peruvian police announced he confessed to murdering Stephanie.
Why? What was his reason?
He claims he got angry because she used his laptop and found information linking him to Natalee Holloway. That was his story anyway.
So he directly connects the two cases himself in his confession.
He does. He even reportedly told Peruvian police he knew where Natalee's body was and would help Aruba find it, though they focused their questioning on the Flores murder.
Did he ever face trial for the Flores murder?
Yes. Indicted quickly for first-degree murder and robbery, convicted and sentenced in January 2012 to 28 years in a Peruvian prison. Finally, some measure of justice, at least for Stephanie's family.
But the Natalee Holloway case still lingered over him, even imprisoned in Peru.
Absolutely. Reports surfaced in March 2016 that he'd confessed again to Natalee's murder, saying he'd always lied, the investigation was bad.
And then again, more recently, when he was extradited to the U.S.
Right. October 2023, he was finally brought to Alabama to face those 2010 extortion charges. And during those proceedings, reports came out that he confessed yet again to Natalee's murder.
These later confessions, how reliable are they considered?
That's the question, isn't it? Given his history of confessing and retracting, and the timing often seeming strategic, it's hard to know what to believe, but it keeps the case, and Natalee's memory, very much alive and haunting.
And the media's role in all this, it was immense, wasn't it? Especially in the U.S.
Oh, colossal. Non-stop coverage on cable news. Greta Van Susteren, Nancy Grace, their shows focused heavily on it, driving ratings.
It felt like it was on TV constantly for a long time.
It really was, often focusing on rumors, speculation,
Right.
maybe sometimes overshadowing the actual investigation.
Beth Twitty became a very public figure through it all.
Her determination, her pleas for information, she really became the face of the search. The Aruban government spokesman even acknowledged the intense scrutiny, saying, "The world is watching." The local press in Aruba covered it heavily too, of course.
That's it for this episode of Voices of the Case. Don't forget to subscribe and see you next time.